Hi, I'm Raina, and this is how I vanished, right in front of my family's eyes. At my mother's birthday party, my sister shattered a glass of Coke in my face and called me useless. My mother smiled. My father turned away. No one said a word. They just watched. They thought I'd break. But none of them knew. The man I married, quiet, composed, always watching, was the Mafia boss the city fears. And when the lights went out, so did the lies, the silence, and everything they thought they controlled. Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? Drop a comment. Let's see how far this story travels. They always arrived first. Delphine and Mom, arm in arm, laughing that same laugh they'd shared since I was 12. The kind that felt rehearsed, tight at the corners. By the time I stepped through the front door, the living room already smelled like glazed ham and potpourri, and voices buzzed like bees over sweet tea and gossip. No one turned their head. I stood for a second, holding the pie I made, peach bourbon, Mom's favorite, watching everyone greet each other with cheek kisses and polished smiles. Then I quietly slid past the hallway, set the pie on the kitchen counter, and smoothed down my skirt. "It's Mom's Day," I whispered to myself. "Don't ruin it." The dining room had been dressed like a southern wedding reception. White tablecloths, gold-trimmed dishes, name cards in cursive. My name was tucked at the far end, beside the swinging kitchen door. I smiled anyway and sat down, folding my hands in my lap like I had done at church growing up, waiting to be acknowledged. They toasted to family. Of course they did. Delphine stood at the head of the table, perfect posture, her champagne glass tilted just right in the afternoon light. She gave a speech about legacy and strong women, glancing at Mom every other sentence like she was expecting applause. People laughed politely, nodded even when they didn't understand what she meant. I kept my eyes on the deviled eggs. Then it happened. She picked up the glass of Coca-Cola in front of her. Delphine doesn't even drink soda, and walked toward me, that same pageant smile stretched across her face. "To the baby of the family," she cooed, "the one who always cleaned up after us." And just like that, the cold, sticky liquid hit my scalp. It soaked into my hair, ran down my cheeks, and into the collar of my blouse. I heard someone gasp, but mostly I heard laughter. Except for mine, I didn't move, I couldn't. I just sat there, drenched, eyes locked with my mother's across the table. She smiled, not wide, just a faint, pressed lip smile like it was nothing, like I deserved it. My father shifted in his seat, looked away toward the window, his face unreadable as always. He wouldn't step in. He never had. Delphine let the empty glass clink gently on the table and turned back to her seat. "Relax, it's just a joke," she said, waving her hand like I was the one overreacting. I reached for the napkin beside my plate, a white linen one, folded into a triangle, and dabbed my face with it slowly, not wiping, not cleaning, just holding it there. It felt softer than I expected, warmer. "You don't deserve this," I whispered, barely loud enough for myself to hear. A waiter, probably someone Delphine hired for the evening, appeared beside me. He didn't say much, just handed me another napkin and, under his breath, murmured, "You don't deserve that?" I wanted to say thank you, but I couldn't find my voice. People returned to their conversations as if nothing had happened. Mom resumed talking to her church friends. Delphine threw her head back and laughed at some story about Milan or Madrid or wherever she had flown last. My dad checked his watch. I sat still, Coke dripping down my back, my hands gripping that white napkin so hard my knuckles ached. I rose quietly. No one stopped me. Out on the porch, the air was warmer than I remembered. The kind of warm that clings to your skin, makes you feel like the whole sky's watching. I stood under the porch light, its yellow glow catching the glisten in my soaked hair. The smell of barbecue floated from the neighbor's yard, but all I could taste was bitterness. "They kept talking," I said aloud, "like nothing happened." My voice sounded strange, like someone else's. I took a deep breath, but it didn't calm me. Instead, it made everything worse. The lump in my throat swelled, pressed against my silence. Still, I didn't cry. Crying would have made it real, and I wasn't ready for that. "You can't cry now," I told myself. "You'll drown in it." I stepped off the porch and walked down the driveway. The sky had turned a soft orange, the sun slipping behind the neighbor's fence. That's when I saw him. Corvin, my husband. He leaned against the car, arms folded, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of his cap. The engine was off, the music too. Just silence between us. He didn't ask what happened, not really. He walked up to me, pulled a napkin from his pocket, and brushed a strand of wet hair off my forehead. One sticky drop clung there, trembling like it hadn't yet decided to fall. He wiped it away. His voice was even, low. "Who did this to you?" I shook my head. "It's family," I said softly. "Let it go." He looked at me for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Family, then." The way he said it. It didn't sound like surrender. When he said family, I didn't realize he meant something very different from what I did. The drive home was silent, not awkward, just contained. I sat beside Corvin, dripping in half-dried Coca-Cola and disbelief, my fingers clenched around the same white napkin, like it might keep me from falling apart. The streetlights blinked past us like metronomes, steady and cold. By the time we pulled into our driveway, the sky had bruised into a deep violet. A soft drizzle had started, tapping against the windshield like it had been waiting for the cue. Inside, the house felt still, like it was holding its breath. I went straight to the bathroom, not saying a word. My skin itched from the sugar and carbonation, but no matter how hot I set the water, the feeling didn't leave. "You can't wash off humiliation," I muttered to the tile wall. "It stains differently." I scrubbed hard, but the stickiness wasn't just on my skin. It was in my chest, under my ribs. The laugh track of the party echoed in my ears like static. I could still hear Delphine's voice. "Relax, it's just a joke." When I stepped out, wrapped in an old robe, I found Corvin sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a black coffee. No cream, no sugar, just like always. He didn't look up when I entered, didn't offer a smile or comfort. He just said, "Tell me who." I shook my head. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." I poured a glass of water, hands still trembling. "Please, don't make a thing out of it. It was stupid, petty, that's all." He finally looked at me then, steady, unreadable. "You said it was family." "And it is." He sipped his coffee, slow. "I don't let people hurt what's mine." I leaned against the counter, unsure if he meant it lovingly or like a line from a movie. Either way, I didn't respond. I didn't want to fan the fire. I just wanted to forget. The kitchen lights flickered once. The hum of the fridge filled the silence. Then my phone buzzed. Delphine. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was light, syrupy sweet. "Ray, come on, don't be like that." "Like what?" "Like all serious. It was just Coke. Not like I threw wine on your precious diner uniform." I forced a chuckle. "Right, just Coke." "You're too sensitive. Honestly, it was kind of funny." "Sure." "Anyway," she went on, clearly satisfied she'd neutralized the situation, "Mom said you left early. That was rude, you know. It was her birthday." I didn't answer. Behind me, Corvin stood. He reached out, took the phone from my hand without asking, and ended the call. Then he opened a notes app and quietly saved the audio. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Backing things up." "Corvin." "I don't play games with people who humiliate you." I didn't know what to say. It wasn't anger I felt. It was something quieter, colder, like I'd just stepped into a room that looked familiar but had been rearranged while I wasn't looking. I went to bed early that night, unable to explain the unease tightening around my throat. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just lay there, watching the shadow of the rain drip down the window pane. Around midnight, I heard my voicemail ping. I listened. "Raina," my mother's voice began, sharp and slow like a knife being dragged. "I don't know why you always make things about you. It was your sister's joke, harmless. But you, once again, you embarrassed her. You always ruin things. Always." I didn't press delete. I just lay there, letting the words sink in like the bathwater that hadn't helped earlier. Even now, it's my fault. I whispered it aloud, not for anyone but myself. Corvin stood by the door. I hadn't even noticed him come in. "I take care of those who hurt what's mine," he said. I sat up. "Don't." Too late. "Corvin, please." But he'd already turned and walked out, his footsteps soft on the hallway floor. The next morning, I woke to chaos, but not mine. My phone lit up with messages from cousins, uncles, a few distant aunts who never text me. "Did you call the landlord? Why did you tell the sponsors? Mom says you're spreading lies. What's wrong with you?" I scrolled, stunned. Delphine's carefully constructed image was cracking. A whisper about unpaid rent here, a hint about misused charity funds there. Her name was being tossed around like a rumor at a church potluck, and I hadn't said a word. I looked at Corvin, sitting once again with his coffee. This time he met my eyes. "What did you do?" He shrugged. "You said let it go. I said I'd take care of it." "You told people things about her?" "I made a call, told a friend what I saw. They made a few more calls." My stomach nodded. "This isn't... I didn't want this." "She threw coke on you in front of 20 people. That wasn't family, that was war. It was petty, not this. You still think this is about coke?" I sat down, palms cold. "Don't do anything else." He didn't blink. I already did. And just like that, the line between protection and something else entirely began to blur. That's when I learned silence can protect or destroy, depending on who holds it. The next morning, I opened the diner 15 minutes early. I needed a routine, something with order, something I could control. The smell of bacon grease and fresh coffee grounded me in ways therapy never had. The sizzle, the clatter of plates. It reminded me that the world kept turning even if yours had cracked a little. I wiped down the counter, my hands moving on autopilot. Same motion I used at the party, only there I'd been wiping soda off my face, not crumbs off vinyl. "You look tired," Jorah said, placing 2 clean coffee cups behind the bar. He was only 20, still new at the job, but he moved like he understood silence. The same one who handed me the napkin that night. I hadn't forgotten. "Didn't sleep much," I replied. He nodded, then glanced at his phone. "You're all over the news." I paused. "What?" Jorah hesitated, then pulled a folded newspaper out of his backpack and laid it on the counter like he was setting down a loaded gun. "Local image consultant under investigation. Fraud, misuse of charity funds." The headline was bold, unforgiving, but the picture, it was unmistakably Delphine. My sister, smiling in her signature white blazer, now framed by scandal. I stared at it like it might change if I blinked hard enough. "This can't be real." Jorah gave a small shrug. "People talk. A customer said she used to work with her, said she always knew something was off." I backed away from the counter. My knees went weak. I didn't say a word to anyone. I hadn't even thought about revenge. I just wanted to disappear after the party, crawl into my life and stay there. But Corvin... "I take care of it," he'd said. The room blurred a little. I sat down in the booth by the window, barely feeling the cushion beneath me. Delphine had spent years building her brand, polished, unshakable. Now her name was sitting in the middle of a storm, and I hadn't lifted a finger. Or had I? My phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. I froze, debating if I should answer. But I knew I had to. "Ray?" Her voice came sharp, clipped. "What the hell did you do?" Nothing." "Don't lie to me. You think I don't know this came from you?" "I swear, Del." "You petty little waitress," she spat. "You've always been jealous. Always." "I didn't even know until just now. I didn't tell anyone." She cut me off. "You'll regret this. I'll ruin you." Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone like it might bite me. I didn't go home right away after my shift. I stayed at the diner through lunch, watching the clouds roll in like they had a grudge. Customers came and went. Some looked at me like they recognized me from somewhere they couldn't quite place. Around 3, I finally drove back. The house was quiet, the rain just beginning to whisper against the windows. Corvin was in the kitchen, back turned, pouring himself a drink. "I need to ask you something," I said, voice low. He didn't turn around. "Tell me you didn't do this." He didn't speak. I stepped closer. "Corvin, look at me." He turned then, slow, calm. "Did she ever apologize to you?" I swallowed hard. "That's not the point." "She poured a drink on your head in front of our entire family." "That doesn't mean you can destroy her life." He tilted his head slightly. "I didn't destroy anything. I passed along some information. People did what they wanted with it." I stared at him, really stared. For the first time in 10 years, I realized how little I knew about the man I married. Not just the quietness or the calm, those I'd always mistaken for gentleness, but the precision, the calculation. "Who are you, Corvin?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm your husband." That evening, I stayed late at the diner again. The kitchen closed early, so I sat alone in my booth, staring at the reflection in the window. My face looked tired, not old, not broken, just used. Like a tool that's been overworked but never sharpened. "I wanted peace," I whispered. "Not war." My own voice didn't sound like mine. It was thinner, older, like it belonged to someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. Outside, the rain fell harder. It slid down the glass in slow rivers, just like it had at the party, just like it had on my face that night. Except now it wasn't Coca-Cola. It was everything I'd never said, everything I'd tried to ignore. And it was all spilling out at once. But peace is never given freely when it comes wrapped in power. The next day drifted by in a haze. I worked my morning shift like a robot, refilled coffee, wiped down counters, smiled on command. But under that smile, my thoughts twisted tighter by the hour. Every time the doorbell chimed, I flinched, half expecting Delphine to come storming in, or worse, some stranger with questions I couldn't answer. Around 4 p.m., just as I was wiping down a table near the window, a boy, couldn't have been older than 16, stepped in. He didn't order anything, just walked up to the counter, placed a folded napkin on the surface, and left without a word. I opened it slowly. My stomach turned. Written in red ink, neat and deliberate. "You didn't ask him to stop." No name, just 2 letters beneath the message, "Si homme." I stared at it for a long while, the ink bleeding ever so slightly into the paper fibers. The napkin was identical to the ones from my mother's birthday party. The same scalloped edges, the same cheap brand they always bought in bulk. I ran my fingers along the edge, and suddenly I was back there again. Coke dripping from my hair, laughter echoing like a wound. I folded it back and tucked it into my apron pocket. Back at home, the rain hadn't fully stopped. The air hung damp, and the house felt colder than usual. Corvin wasn't in the living room, but the TV was on, muted, some documentary flickering shadows across the walls. The silence settled deep. My phone buzzed. Delphine. I answered, unsure why. Her tone surprised me. Not screaming, not sharp, just cold, precise. You think you're clean? What? You let him do it. Don't pretend you didn't know. I didn't. She cut in before I could finish. You always wanted to be seen, Ray. Well, now everyone's looking. Then she hung up. I stared at the screen, the edges of my vision blurring. My fingers trembled, but not from fear. At least, not the kind I'd always known. This felt heavier, like something had shifted beneath me, and I was just now realizing I'd been standing on glass. I needed clarity. So I drove. Mom's house was 10 minutes away. I didn't call ahead. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe comfort, maybe denial. Maybe I just wanted to hear someone say none of this was real. I rang the doorbell twice. The porch light flickered above me. The smell of wet earth filled the space between breaths. The door opened just a crack. Gwenora didn't smile. You shouldn't have come, she said flatly. Mom, I need to talk. She didn't open the door wider. You've shamed us all. My throat tightened. I haven't done anything. Maybe your sister was right about you, she whispered, then shut the door without another word. The click of the lock echoed louder than thunder. I stood there for a moment, rain beginning to fall again, soaking my hair, my shoulders, my shoes. But I didn't cry this time. I whispered toward the door. You always needed a villain. I just stopped auditioning. I turned and walked away, slow and steady, like I wasn't breaking inside. Back at the diner, I locked the front door early. I just needed space to breathe. But I wasn't alone long. Jorah showed up half an hour later, hoodie dripping, eyes wide. They're saying someone's gone missing, he said without preamble. One of your sister's business people. What? I heard it from a guy who works security. Something about documents, sponsors. He vanished last night. My stomach dropped. Raina, they're saying Corvin's people were involved. My voice caught. Why are you telling me this? Because I saw his face when you left the party. That wasn't a man upset for his wife. That was something else. I leaned against the counter to stay upright. Who is he really? I asked, barely above a whisper. Jorah didn't answer. Just looked at me like he wished he didn't know either. He left as quietly as he came. That night, I lay in bed facing the window. The rain still hadn't stopped. Corvin came in late. I felt the bed dip behind me, the shift of his weight. He didn't say anything for a long time. Just reached out, ran his hand gently down my back, like I was something fragile that might splinter under pressure. Then, softly, he said, You asked me to protect you. I did. I closed my eyes. No, I whispered. You protected your pride, not me. That was the night I stopped being afraid of losing him and started fearing who I'd become if I stayed. The next morning, I woke to the smell of bacon and the faint hum of Sinatra floating in from the kitchen. Fly me to the moon, slow and smooth, like nothing had changed, like we weren't standing on the edge of something terrifying. Corvin stood at the stove, humming as he flipped eggs. The way his shoulders moved in rhythm to the music made it feel like he was rehearsing normal. He placed a plate in front of me, scrambled eggs, toast, perfectly sliced fruit. Eat while it's hot, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I sat, fork in hand, but didn't lift it. My appetite was gone. You don't need to go to the diner today, he said, pouring himself coffee. His voice was low, casual. Why not? I asked, finally meeting his gaze. He didn't answer right away, just sipped his coffee and looked out the window. Because I said so. The words sat heavy between us. I nodded once, slowly, then took a bite just so I wouldn't have to speak. After breakfast, he kissed the top of my head and left the room. I waited until I heard the soft click of his office door closing. I cleared the table mechanically, plates, forks, napkins. When I reached for the kitchen drawer to grab a dish towel, I noticed something beneath the neatly folded linens. A small black phone. Not mine, not his. I picked it up, hands trembling slightly. The screen lit up with a pattern of unread messages. I didn't need a password. The phone was already open. Photos of me, leaving the diner, standing at Mom's house, talking to Jorah, texts with names I didn't recognize. She left at 7:18 p.m., watched from across the street, no interaction with unknown male. My knees buckled slightly. I gripped the edge of the counter. I wasn't being protected, I was being watched. The kitchen walls seemed to press in tighter. The velvet touch of safety now felt like padded walls in a cell. Later that morning, there was a knock at the front door. I opened it to find my father standing there, hat in hand, rain jacket draped over one arm. His eyes were tired, his frame smaller than I remembered. "I hope it's not a bad time," he said. "No," I whispered, stepping aside. He didn't sit, just looked around the room like he hadn't been in it in years. Maybe he hadn't. "I know you didn't do anything," he said softly. "But people are talking. They're watching you now." I didn't know what to say. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. 2 girls on a porch swing, one grinning with jelly on her chin, the other, me, frowning, arms crossed. "I kept this in my wallet for 30 years, he said. "Your mother raised one daughter to shine, the other to clean up the mess." He handed me the photo, and for a moment, I didn't feel like crying. I felt seen. "I should have done more," he added, barely above a whisper. That was the first time I believed him. Hours passed after he left. The house was too quiet. I sat with the photograph in my lap, tracing the edges when another knock came. 2 people in suits, professional, smiling. "Mrs. Hale?" the woman asked. I nodded. "We're with the Bureau. Mind if we ask you a few questions?" I motioned them inside, heart pounding. I tried to steady my breathing. "Do you know what your husband does for a living?" she asked as she sat. "He's a logistics consultant," I answered quickly. The mail agent nodded slowly, writing something down. "Has he ever mentioned business in South Florida? Offshore accounts?" I blinked. "No, why would he?" They didn't press, just exchanged a glance, handed me a card, and left with another polite smile. I locked the door behind them and leaned against it, trying not to slide to the floor. That night, Corvin didn't come out of his office. I sat on the other side of the door, clutching the photo like a lifeline. "You said you'd protect me," I whispered. "But from who?" Through the thick wood, I heard his voice, steady, clipped, on the phone. "If they come closer, make it disappear." My blood turned cold. But by morning, I would. I drove downtown before sunrise, the sky still bruised with the last bit of night. Corvin's office sat on the 32nd floor of a glass tower, sleek and cold, like everything about him lately. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Of course she did, and buzzed me through without a word. People stepped aside as I passed, not out of respect, out of fear. When I pushed open the door to his private office, he was standing by the window, looking out at the skyline. His reflection in the glass looked more real than the man himself. I dropped the small black phone onto his desk. It hit the wood with a dull thud. "You've been tracking me." He didn't flinch, just turned, slow and deliberate. "You move too close to fire, you burn," he said softly. "I keep you safe." "Safe?" My voice cracked, but only slightly. "You call watching me safety?" He walked closer, calm as always. "You don't understand the world you live in, Raina. It's not safe for people who don't play the game." I laughed once, bitter, dry. "And what game is that?" "The only one that matters," he said. That's when it hit me. The guards outside, the way people moved around him, the quiet respect masked as fear. It wasn't loyalty. It was obedience. "You're not just part of this," I whispered. "You run it." He didn't deny it. His eyes met mine, steady, almost tender. "I wanted peace for you. That's why I hid it." I took a step back. "You didn't hide it for me. You hid it from me." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. For a moment, I thought he might try to explain, to reach for me. Instead, his phone buzzed on the desk. He answered with a calm, "Yes," and listened. Then, his expression shifted, barely, but I saw it. "What?" he said quietly. He hung up, then turned to me. "Your sister's missing." My knees nearly gave out. "What?" "She was last seen last night, downtown, at one of the properties." I shook my head. "What property?" He didn't answer, just walked back to the window. I followed. "Corvin, tell me you didn't—" He cut me off. "Not everything that happens is my doing." I felt something twist inside me, a mix of fury, grief, and something worse, doubt. My phone rang next, Mom's number. Her voice came through in pieces, broken by sobs. "Raina, she's gone. Delphine's gone. The police. There's a video. She was fighting with someone from Corvin's company." I couldn't breathe. "Mom, listen to me." But she hung up. I turned back to Corvin. "This is your fault." He didn't look at me. "You wanted protection," he said simply. "Protection comes with consequences." That sentence stayed with me long after I walked out. By nightfall, I was back at the diner. It was empty, too quiet. The sign outside flickered, half-lit, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to stay alive or give up. I sat in my usual booth, the one by the window, and stared at the napkin fluttering across the floor. White, plain, familiar. I picked it up and held it between my fingers. It felt heavier than paper should. "Everything I touch disappears," I murmured. I thought of Delphine, of my father's apology, of the woman I used to be, the one who thought silence was strength. Maybe silence wasn't protection after all. Maybe it was surrender. I locked up the diner and stepped outside into the night air. The rain had stopped, but the street still shimmered with it. That's when I saw him again, the FBI agent from before, leaning against a car across the street. He straightened when he saw me. "Mrs. Hale," he said, his tone even. "We need to talk." "I've said everything I can." He shook his head. "No, you haven't." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "You need to decide. Are you with him or against him?" The words hit harder than I expected. I looked past him, down the long stretch of dark street, the city lights glowing like promises I no longer believed in. "I don't know yet," I said quietly. He nodded once like he'd expected that answer and walked away. I stood there, the keys to my diner still cold in my hand, the weight of everything pressing against me. But deep down, something had shifted. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was awake. By morning I would. The sky was still dark when I unlocked the diner door. The air inside smelled like coffee grounds and rain-damp wood. The FBI agent was already waiting in the back booth, suit pressed, tie slightly loose, as if pretending he belonged in a place like this. "Thanks for coming," he said, sliding a folder across the table. The sound of paper scraping against vinyl was too loud in the empty room. I sat down slowly, eyes on the folder but not touching it. "You said you had proof." He nodded. "Everything we need to bring him down. Bank records, offshore transfers, shell companies. Your husband's name is on every line." I didn't look up. "What do you want from me?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You can walk away clean if you help us." "And if I don't?" He didn't hesitate. "Then when he falls, you fall too." I stared at the folder, at my own reflection, faintly mirrored in the plastic cover. For a long moment, I couldn't tell if I was shaking from fear or from the cold that seemed to live in me now. Finally, I whispered, What would you have me do? Keep doing what you're doing, he said. But this time you tell us everything. I nodded once. No tears, no pleading. Just the quiet sound of my own decisions settling inside me like a stone at the bottom of a well. When I stepped out, the sky was beginning to pale. I drove home with both hands gripping the wheel, knuckles white. Every red light felt like it lasted forever. The house was dark when I walked in. I thought he was asleep until I saw the faint orange glow from the living room. Corvin sat there, a half-finished glass of whiskey in one hand, eyes fixed on the floor. You were gone long, he said, voice steady, too calm. Busy? I forced a small smile. Just needed air. He nodded, but I saw the way his eyes flicked to my purse, to my hands. Always watching, always calculating. I walked past him, feeling the weight of his silence follow me down the hall. In the bedroom, I changed clothes, trying to quiet the pounding in my chest. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone still in my hand, debating whether to call the agent again, when it buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Ray? I froze. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. Delphine? A low laugh on the other end. Bitter. I'm alive. Surprised? My throat went dry. Where are you? Doesn't matter, she said. You should worry about yourself. When this story breaks, your husband won't be the only one burning. Delphine, listen. But she cut me off. Don't pretend you didn't know. You've been sitting in his house, eating his meals while he ruins lives. Maybe you deserve each other. The line went dead. I stared at the phone screen until it dimmed to black. My reflection stared back, tired, hollow-eyed, unrecognizable. Later that night, I found Corvin in his office, talking quietly into his phone. I waited until he hung up. If I told you I knew something that could ruin us both, I said softly, would you stop? He looked up, his expression unreadable. You think you can save us with truth? I took a step closer. No, I'll save myself with it. Something flickered in his eyes, a flash of recognition, maybe even admiration. Then he smiled, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. Careful, Ray, he said. You're standing too close to the edge. I met his gaze. Maybe that's the only place I can still breathe. He stood, walked over, and pulled me into an embrace. I didn't resist. My cheek pressed against his shoulder, the scent of his cologne familiar and suffocating all at once. You'll always be mine, he whispered. Behind his back, my hand trembled. Under my sleeve, the tiny mic the agent had given me glowed faintly red. Not anymore, I thought. Not anymore. By sunrise, every lie would have to choose which side it belonged to. The warehouse sat on the edge of the city like a forgotten memory. The storm had been circling all evening, and now it had arrived in full, slamming rain against the metal roof, thunder rumbling like distant cannon fire. Corvin had sent a message that said, simply, we need to talk. Come alone. I came. I was never good at pretending I wasn't afraid, but tonight I hid it well. The wire under my blouse felt heavier with each step I took. I could hear my own breath louder than the rain as I pushed open the door. Inside it was dim, half lit by hanging bulbs that flickered against the storm's fury. Corvin stood by a long steel desk, calm as always, like he'd been waiting for a dinner guest, not a reckoning. You think I don't know what you've done? His voice didn't rise. That's what made it worse. I walked in farther, the echo of my heels bouncing off the concrete walls. Then why am I still breathing? His jaw flexed. Because I'm not done with you yet. I didn't flinch. I wanted to, but I didn't. His phone buzzed on the desk. He didn't reach for it at first, just stared at me. Then, slowly, he picked it up. The screen lit up with a breaking news alert. I watched the blood drain from his face. Federal probe targets, Houston Mafia boss, Corvin Hale. Live footage played below the headline, raids, agents and windbreakers, documents being hauled out of polished downtown offices he once called consulting spaces. He looked at me, not like a husband, like a man trying to solve a puzzle before the pieces melted in the rain. "You did this." I shook my head. "No, we did this to ourselves." He stepped around the desk, slow and deliberate. "I trusted you. I gave you everything, and you gave them me." Thunder cracked. Then the lights went out. The sudden blackness swallowed everything. Somewhere outside, shouts rose. A window shattered. The sting had started. I dropped low, crawling behind the desk. My palms sliced across shards of glass, but I didn't stop. Somewhere to my left, I heard someone shout my name. I whispered to myself, "Not again. I won't stay silent again." A gunshot cracked in the distance. Closer than before. I kept moving. The emergency lights flickered on in sickly red pulses. I stood just long enough to find cover behind a row of stacked crates. Then I saw him, Corvin, emerging from the shadows, a pistol in one hand, confusion etched deep into his face. Not panic, not yet. He spotted me. We froze. "I would have burned the world for you," he said, voice low, hoarse. I was shaking, but I stood tall. "That's exactly why I couldn't stay." He stepped forward, I stepped back. And then I reached behind me, grabbing the remote I had hidden in my coat pocket earlier, the one the agent had given me. I pressed it. Speakers hidden in the corners of the room kicked on, his own voice flooding the warehouse. Every deal, every threat, every name. He spun in place, as if trying to find the source, but it was everywhere. The warehouse doors burst open. Agents swarmed in, guns raised, voices commanding, boots pounding. Corvin dropped the gun without a word. They cuffed him, tight and clean. Still, he didn't look at them. He looked at me. There was no rage, no pleading, just a quiet, broken question behind his eyes. Why? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Minutes later, I stood outside the warehouse in the rain, soaked from head to toe. It was the same rain from Chapter 1, but it didn't feel like shame anymore. It felt like washing something off. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled white napkin, the same kind they used at my family's parties, the same kind that had started all this. I wiped my face with it. "You don't deserve this," I whispered to no one, but I finally do. They said the storm had passed, but I knew healing would take longer than the rain. 3 months later, I could still hear the echo of thunder on certain mornings. Not outside, but inside. A quiet memory that stirred behind the clink of cups and the slow hiss of a milk steamer. I'd moved south after it all. Galveston was far enough from Houston to feel like a new beginning, but close enough to remind me not to forget. I opened a small cafe near the coast. Nothing fancy. Just 6 tables, a chalkboard menu, and windows that framed the ocean like a painting. The place smelled like sea salt and espresso every morning. I opened at 6 sharp. Locals trickled in just after sunrise. They didn't know who I had been, only who I was now. Raina, the quiet woman with tired eyes and good coffee. And that was enough. This morning was like most, gentle, hushed, uncomplicated. I wiped down the countertop, listening to the rhythmic pulse of the waves beyond the patio. Seagulls floated in the sky like tiny question marks, and the breeze smelled of low tide and wet wood. Then the bell above the door rang. I didn't turn around at first. Something in the sound was different. Not the usual jingle of a fisherman or an elderly couple on their morning stroll. There was weight in that entrance. I turned, and there she was, Delphine, in black sunglasses, high collar, hair pulled back tight like a line ready to snap. She looked older, or maybe just less polished. The sharpness was still there, but it had dulled at the edges, like she'd finally run out of things to prove. We didn't speak for a long while. I poured her a coffee without asking. She didn't thank me. She didn't need to. We sat in silence at the table by the window, where the morning light touched the wood just right. The sea outside was calm, like it didn't remember the storm at all. "I didn't do it to save you," Delphine said finally. Her voice was flat, honest. I didn't blink. "I know." She set her sunglasses on the table. Her eyes looked tired. "I wanted him to burn. That's it." I nodded. "He did." Delphine ran her fingers along the mug's rim. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said. Then I looked out the window. "Not anymore. Hate kept me quiet once. I'm done being quiet." She looked away then, and for the first time she looked small. "I thought you'd fall apart," she whispered. "You always seemed like the fragile one." "I was never fragile," I said. "Just quiet." And sometimes quiet people survive because they learn how to listen while everyone else is shouting. Delphine didn't respond. She just sat there, absorbing it. Later that week, Arthur stopped by. I hadn't seen him since the courthouse hearing. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes held a warmth that hadn't been there before. Not quite pride, something closer to peace. He didn't stay long, just ordered tea and handed me a folded letter. "She didn't sign it," he said. "But I figured you'd know who it's from." He left without another word. I opened the letter slowly, like it might bite. Gwenora's handwriting, still neat, still sharp, read only one line. "You were always the stronger one." I folded it carefully and tucked it in the drawer under the cash register. I didn't cry. There was nothing left in me to spill over. Not for her, not for that. That afternoon, I wiped down a table by the window, the same one where Delphine had sat, where the sunlight always hit just right. My hand moved in circles, slow and steady. Habitual. Then, without really thinking, I reached into my apron and pulled out a single white napkin. Same kind from the diner, from the house, from every chapter of my old life. But this one was clean. No tears, no blood, no coffee stains, just clean. I laid it flat on the table and stared at it for a moment. "You don't deserve this," I whispered again. Only this time I wasn't thinking of Corvin, or Delphine, or even Gwenora. I was thinking of me. Then I smiled, faintly, and added, "But I finally do." The cafe doorbell rang. 2 college kids walked in, laughing about a spilled smoothie and the way the tide had pulled one of their sandals out to sea. I waved them toward the patio. They smiled at me like I was part of the town, part of their morning. I watched them settle into chairs, sun warming their backs, and I turned toward the window. My own reflection looked back at me. Older, yes, but whole. "For years, I thought silence was weakness," I murmured to the glass. "But sometimes silence is the loudest way to begin again." And I meant it.